Hello, Gavin here, welcome back to the channel. Today we're going to look at why using your thumb can be a great technique to master on the bass. So if you've ever taken bass lessons, you'll have likely been encouraged by your bass teacher to use a traditional fingerstyle playing technique. And of course this is the best technique to master when you're starting out because it gives you a great foundation for your playing. But you might find that as you've been playing, you've added in techniques like using a plectrum, slap bass, and maybe even looked at using your thumb. This is actually a really cool technique to master, and actually you'll see many bass players, from session greats like Pino Palladino to modern bass players like Victor Wooten and Yannick Gwizdala, they all use these techniques to create great sounds on the bass guitar. So today we're going to look at 4 reasons why this could be a great thing to add to your playing technique. Reason number 1 is it's a great technique for creating the old school muted tones that you'll hear on loads of classic recordings. All the classic bass tones that you'll have heard on 60s recordings, from Motown and Stax to the Beach Boys, they all use this style of bass tone. And this was primarily achieved by using a Fender bass, because a Fender bass had these ashtrays that covered the bridge and the pickups, and the bridge one had a foam mute inside it that lightly pressed against the strings to create that muted sound. But on most basses, not just Fenders, you don't actually have this. And of course there are mute systems you can fit, or you could add a bit of foam yourself. But if you want to switch between that sound and a more traditional, common bass sound, the best way to do this is to use your thumb and to use the palm of your hand rested against the strings. And this is often referred to as palm muting. And the best way to do this is to rest flat your hand against the strings, not pressing down too hard, but just resting against the strings, and then to use your thumb to pluck the muted strings. So we're going to look at doing this in the next clip. I'll be using this bass with flatwound strings, but really you could use any bass with any style of strings, you'll just get a slightly different tone depending on what you choose to use. But let's see how this sounds in the next clip. Reason to use a technique like this would be to play chords. And you might be thinking to yourself, why on earth would I want to play chords as a bass player? Well, playing chords can actually be a really cool technique to use, and it's something that modern bass players like Victor Wooten and Yannick Gwizdala, they're really bringing this to the forefront in jazz and electronic genres. But to do this, we'll have to use a slightly different form of the technique. In fact, it's almost like guitar finger picking. We're going to use the same shape that we did before, so still kind of resting our hand and using our thumb, but you're also going to use your first and second finger to pick the higher strings. And in fact, in the next clip that we're about to show, you'll see me doing this to pick the chords. I'll also be playing a melody note, but this is something I've added in just for a bit of fun. To play the chords, really this technique is key to doing this. Of course you could do it traditionally with fingerstyle, but it's a little bit more awkward to play. This is a much more comfortable and controlled way of doing it. So before we watch this next clip, I just want to add that I am using a delay pedal. It's the Ernie Ambient delay for a little bit of delay and reverb, and I'm also using the Squier 54 jazz bass with roundwound strings. Again, none of this is necessary. This technique will work with anything you're using, and you don't need to have delay pedals on, but I just felt for the track it made it a bit more atmospheric and created a really nice tone for the track. So let's have a listen to that now so you can see how this technique works. So for the third reason, we're actually going to use the same technique that we used for the chord video, but what you'll find is that this can also be used to create really nice drone effects. For a lot of modern music, the bass is being pushed to the forefront and you're playing a lot of melodies now. So having the ability to play high melodic lines, but also play low drone notes underneath can be really useful. So in the next clip, I'll still be using the same technique, and I'll also be using the same bass and the same delay pedal for this video, but what I'll be doing is playing low drone notes with my thumb, and picking harmonics as a melody with my fingers. And you'll see that the two, when combined, those harmonics sitting on top of the drone notes can create a really huge atmospheric tone and can give you that melody and the bass note below it. So let's watch that clip now so you can see how that all comes together. Finally, we're going to look at fuzz pedals. This probably comes as no surprise to anyone that's watched any of my other videos, but with a fuzz pedal and using the palm muting technique we looked at in the first clip, you can really reshape how the pedal sounds. I find that this technique takes quite an aggressive tone and makes it a lot more subtle and almost more of a vintage keyboard sound. And to do this today, I'll be using this bass again, but I'll be running it through the Bad Penny Effects little box. It's a really nice sounding fuzz, which I actually did a full demo of, so that'll be linked in the description below. But you'll hear how it takes that quite aggressive sound and makes it a much more subtle, old school fuzz tone. So let's hear how that sounds in the next clip. I think this is a great technique to try and master. It adds a lot to your playing and just adds a whole other host of sounds that you can create from the bass guitar. But of course, this is my opinion. I'd love to hear what you thought on this topic. Let me know what you think in the comments of this technique and any other techniques you're using to create these sounds. I'd love to hear what you're all doing. But until next time, I hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, please hit like and subscribe down below and click that bell icon so you can be notified of more content when it's available. Thank you very much for watching. Keep working on those bass faces.